It's Okay Not to Be Okay, But I Promise I'm Trying by rayrae118. Chapter 22. The next weekend held another Hogsmeade trip, which was a good thing, all things considered. Many girls wanted to make sure they were all prepared for the ball. They had been told to bring dress robes, but of course Ginny, as a third year, hadn't done so. She didn't want to write home to her mother and ask her for some. For one thing, she didn't want to put that strain on her parents. Not to mention she had seen the robes Ron had, and she didn't want to have to deal with the humiliation of wearing something like that. And she didn't want to tell her mother that she had a date. She wasn't ashamed, but she was afraid that her mum might think she was too young. Harry also wanted to wait to tell her parents in person. He was sweet like that. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, and surprisingly warm for December. Harry and his friends met up at breakfast, with Susan joining them at the Gryffindor table. She drew some looks, but since there was no rule that prohibited her from sitting on the tables, no one said anything. They decided to spend the morning together before Harry and Ginny, Neville and Susan split off for the rest of the day on their own. Ron and Hermione looked somewhat less than pleased, mostly, because they meant they would have to spend all their time together again. Ron still hadn't apologised, and Hermione was trying to speak with him as little as possible. As Harry had brought several formal robes from him and Minerva's shopping trip that summer, he didn't need to get anything. Neville and Ron also were all set, though Ron definitely not looking forward to seeing him in his mouldy old 100-year-old robes. The girls, however, were very excited to go to Gladrags. Ginny had confided in the other two that she didn't have a lot of money, so she hoped to find something on sale that would work. Susan and Hermione had been very supportive and told her they would help. Inside the clothing store was not too crowded yet, since they had left early, and the boys watched bemused as the girls disappeared between the racks. Neville and Ron simply waited by the door, but Harry followed at a slower pace, perusing the racks of dresses, and was about to join in the girls at the dressing rooms, when something jumped out at him. He pulled the dress out and studied it. It was a medium dark green in colour, with golden highlights across the top and bottom, and as a sash around the waist as well. It had spaghetti strap sleeves, and the cut was modest enough to consider Ginny's age, and it would complement his own dark green robes. He smiled and brought it with him to the back of the store. Hermione looked over the dress with a critical eye and nodded, smiling. Harry just grinned and went back to the other boys, as Hermione handed over the dress to Ginny to try on. Susan joined them again as Ginny stepped out wearing the dress. It was perfect. Ginny could see it in Hermione and Susan's eyes, and moreover, she felt beautiful in it. Hermione was simply gushing. "Oh, Ginny, it's beautiful! You look amazing!" Susan wasn't far behind. "You should definitely get that one," she agreed. "Harry won't know what hit him." Ginny blushed, but nodded, before she went to change back into her regular clothes. Hermione took that moment to fill Susan in. "Harry actually picked that one out," she informed her friend quietly, "and I don't think he really considered Ginny's budget." Susan adopted the same worried look, but Ginny returned a moment later, as they headed to the front counter to pay for the dress. Harry met them there, smiling. The clerk immediately wrapped up the dress, but shook her head as Ginny reached for her money bag. "Oh, don't worry, dear, it's all taken care of." Ginny frowned, confused, before she turned to Harry. "You shouldn't have—" she started, but Harry cut her off. "I wanted to, Gin." He held up a hand to stave off any more of her protests. "You're my girlfriend, Ginny. If I can't waste money on you, who can I waste it on? It's not like I don't have enough." Ron was close enough by that point to hear what his friend had done. His face turned red and he started to splutter out objections, but Harry just spoke over him. "Ron, I've never had someone to spend money on, or really even enough money to spend. It makes me happy to see Ginny happy." He looked down. "I finally understand why Aunt Minerva and Sirius keep wanting to buy me things." Ron shut up with that, and Ginny just gave him a huge hug and a kiss, thanking him profusely. Hermione and Susan just looked on smiling, and Neville wisely chose that moment to drag Ron out of the store before he said something else to make a fool out of himself with. The group moved on from Gladrags, appeasing Ron by going to Honeydukes next, and then making their way towards the Three Broomsticks for lunch. After lunch they split up, with Neville and Susan disappearing into the village where they would meet Amelia at some point, so that Susan could tell her aunt about their worries about Snape and Dumbledore's use of legilimency on students, and Harry and Ginny headed away from the hustle and bustle of the crowd with a final wave to Ron and Hermione. Harry led Ginny up to the Shrieking Shack, ignoring her questions with a secretive smile. Ginny gasped in pleasure as Harry stopped and stepped aside. There was a blanket set out with a picnic basket and a vase containing a single red rose. "Harry," she trailed off. The boy wizard just led her over to the blanket, sitting them both down and opening the basket. "I know we just ate, but I thought we could have some dessert," he said, pulling out a rather impressive-looking cake. He looked at it a little embarrassed. "I asked Dobby for help, since he's working at Hogwarts now. I thought he might be willing. I think he got a little over-enthusiastic." Ginny smiled, swiping at the chocolate frosting with one finger. She sighed contentedly. "I don't think I mind his over-enthusiasm, if this is the result." Harry chuckled and brought out 2 plates, a knife, 2 forks, and a bottle of milk with 2 cups. Ginny was startled to realise the area where their picnic was taking place on was rather warm, much warmer than a December day would suggest. Harry just smiled and said, "Dobby," like it explained everything. Ginny had to admit it probably did. House elf magic would be more than capable of swathing the small area in warming charms. The pair spent the next hour eating as much of the cake as they could and talking. It was moments like this that Harry truly cherished. This was how he really got to know Ginny. They could feel each other's emotions, but that didn't necessarily mean they understood each other. These stolen moments in time, where he learned about her hopes and dreams, where she told him how she wanted to play Quidditch, or how she always felt separated from the rest of her family. That was what he cherished. When the sun had started to go down, Harry got up with a sigh, stretching before he held out a hand for Ginny. They looked at the basket and blanket, but Harry shook his head and said, "Dobby said he'd clean up," he told her. So the only thing they had left was the rose, which Ginny tucked behind her ear after Harry cleared it of its thorns and shortened the stem. They made a slow, leisurely pace back to the castle, barely arriving back at the gates before they were closed. Minerva looked at them with a fond smile, shaking her head. "Get inside, you two," she said, looking down the lane for any more stragglers. Harry grinned, nodding as he led his girlfriend inside for dinner. Over dinner, Susan told Harry and the others about her conversation with her aunt, speaking in a low voice to keep other people from hearing. "Auntie said to keep practicing occlumency, and she'll try to find a teacher for us over the summer. She can't do anything without concrete proof, considering Dumbledore's the most influential wizard in Britain, but she says if we feel anything like a pressure in our minds in their presence, break eye contact immediately." They all nodded their agreement, and Harry tried to think back on the last few months of the potions lessons, trying to remember if he felt anything like that. He could visualise several headaches early on into the term, and from the last few years, wondered if that had been Snape trying to access his memories. Hearing Amelia's thoughts seemed to spur them on, even Ron, to put in more effort into their self-study. Late that night, Harry met Ginny in the common room. The fire was almost out, casting an unearthly glow over the room. Ginny met him with a kiss as he slipped his invisibility cloak over them and led her out of the portrait hall. A quick conversation with Cedric a few days ago had given him the password to the prefect's bathroom. Sirius had wanted to tell Harry what the task was, to thank him for giving him the information on the dragons, but Harry shook his head, telling the older boy that he had an idea of how to solve it, and asked if there was anywhere warmer than the Black Lake to submerge his egg. Cedric had grinned and given him the password. The halls were eerie in the light of the full moon, and Harry spared a thought for Remus and wondered if he and Sirius were playing on the grounds of McGonagall Castle at that moment. Even though Sirius had been freed, he still hadn't moved from Minerva's ancestral home. He claimed it was because Black Manor wasn't ready for habitation, but Harry thought it was just so that he could have access to a Quidditch pitch. Harry figured the next move he would make would be to the Bones estate, and it wouldn't come up until you put a ring on Amelia's finger. "Pine fresh," Harry whispered, and watched as the door swung open to reveal an almost swimming pool-sized tub. The pair removed their cloak, setting it aside and moving over to the tub. Ginny began filling it with water, and when it was full, the two of them removed their bathrobes, revealing their swimming costumes underneath. Harry blushed as he saw the look Ginny was giving him. He didn't think he was anything special to look at, but apparently Ginny disagreed. Teenagers. Indeed, the 13-year-old was hard-pressed to stop staring. Harry didn't have well-defined muscles, but they were definitely there. With the nutrient potions Madame Pomfrey had been giving him, he had grown into the young man he should have been. Without his glasses, she could see his sparkling green eyes clearly, a feature she absolutely loved. A subtle six-pack was starting to make itself known, and Ginny raised an eyebrow. "You've been exercising?" she accused, a slight smile on her lips. Harry shrugged. "Sirius said it was a good idea, and I really have noticed a difference." Ginny nodded, tearing her gaze away as she shut off the water. "Maybe I should join you," she commented. Harry smiled in reply. "I'd like that," he replied as he grabbed the egg and made his way into the tub. Ginny followed. Once they were both submerged, Harry placed the egg under the water. "Here goes nothing." Then he opened it. A small bubble of air escaped, and Harry and Ginny ducked under the surface to hear the clue. "Come seek us where our voices sound. We cannot sing above the ground. While you're searching, ponder this. We've taken what you'll sorely miss. An hour long you'll have to look, and to recover what we took. But past an hour, the prospect's black. Too late, it's gone, it won't come back." Harry and Ginny resurfaced, gasping. When they got their breath back, they began to work on the clue. "Come seek us where our voices sound. Well, we already figured merpeople might be something to do with it. It must be the Black Lake," Harry reasoned. Ginny nodded. "We've taken what you'll surely miss. They're going to take something and hide it in the lake, probably." Harry agreed. "So we'll have an hour to find it." "But what would they take? The only thing I can't really replace is my invisibility cloak, and I don't think they'd use that." Ginny bit her lip, frowning. "What if it's not a thing?" she asked hesitantly. Harry looked confused for only a moment before he scowled. No. They wouldn't be that stupid, would they? To kidnap 4 students and stash them in a lake in February? Not even Dumbledore could be that thick. Ginny stood up, exiting the tub and drying herself off before she put her robes back on. "Harry, this tournament's not supposed to be safe." "I think they would. It makes for better entertainment value, after all." Not even Ron could have missed the sarcasm in her voice as Harry also left the tub. "I won't let it happen, Gin," he promised. Ginny just shook her head. "I'll be fine, Harry. I don't think even Dumbledore would let something happen to those the champions will sorely miss." Harry sighed, frustrated as he tied his robe. "I understand the champions being in danger. They signed up for this. Well, most of them. But you, and whoever will be chosen for the others, you're just innocent bystanders. I can't believe your parents would be alright with this." "Harry Potter, you will not tell my mother," Ginny growled. "She doesn't need to worry. Besides, you're going to rescue me, right?" Harry leaned down and kissed her, not at all chastely. "Always," he whispered lovingly. All the fight went out of Ginny there, and she allowed herself to be wrapped up in the invisibility cloak once more, as the two made their way back up to the tower. Ever since Hermione had told them about Victor asking her to the ball, Harry had wanted to have a conversation with the Quidditch star. Fortunately, the opportunity to do so came just about that morning. Harry and Ginny, who were looking rather tired, made their way outside for a morning run. Harry had explained the necessity of stretching properly and trying not to do too much too fast. Harry set an easy pace around the Quidditch pitch, thinking to himself that it would get too cold to do this outside, and trying to come up with a place he could exercise inside. Even though he was going much more slowly than normal, Ginny was still panting by the time they made it halfway around the edge. She was red-faced and completely out of breath by the time they finished one lap, so Harry stopped and led her through some basic warm-down exercises. When she had gotten back some of her breath, Ginny had looked up. "How many laps do you do every day?" she asked, still panting. Harry shrugged, stretching his arm behind his back before moving on to his hamstrings. "Usually 4. I'm almost up to 5 now." Ginny stared, unable to comprehend how he could do so much without collapsing. Harry shrugged. "It really helps with spellcasting, and if you get into a fight, you'll probably be able to hold your own, or maybe even win. Something I've realised that the wizarding world doesn't have a lot of physical exercise. Other than Quidditch, there's no real sport." Harry started leading her back towards the castle, still explaining. "Something Sirius, Remus and I talked about over the summer was what had happened to me over the last few years. We all agree that Voldemort will come back, and if this tournament is any indication, it will probably happen sooner rather than later. Sirius and Remus want me to be prepared for that eventuality, which is why all the training." He smiled. "Sirius said you were doing quite well this summer. If you want to join me for more, I think I'd like that. As my girlfriend, you'd probably be in even more danger." Harry looked guilty at that, and Ginny half expected him to start spouting some self-sacrificing crap about breaking up with her for her own good. She shook her head. "Harry, the Weasleys have always stood against evil. I am in as much danger from that as I am with you. You're not getting rid of me that easily." Harry smiled, selfishly happy that she wasn't afraid to be in danger, even if the noble part of him wanted her to walk away. He spotted Victor across the lawn at that moment, and nudged Ginny to head in that direction. When she looked at him, confused, Harry just winked. "Victor?" The Quidditch star looked up, startled and a little confused, but he waited for the 2 Hogwarts students to catch up to him. Harry waited until he came to a stop, nodding thankfully. "I just want to talk to you for a moment, if you have it," he said. Victor just nodded, so Harry smiled and continued. "I understand you asked my friend Hermione to the ball." Victor looked a little more uncomfortable, but he nodded again. "Nini's very nice. She does not fawn like other girls. She is smart and beautiful." Harry's smile widened. "I just wanted to let you know that she is one of my best friends. So if you hurt her, I hurt you. Understood?" Victor looked startled. Ginny just tried to hold in a snort. Harry cleared his throat. "Just so we're clear?" He started to turn away, but Victor spoke again. "Wait." Harry turned back. "Your other friend, the redhead. He likes Hermione, doesn't he?" Harry looked a little surprised that Victor had seen that, but he figured it would be pretty obvious to anyone except Hermione and Ron. "We talked about him last weekend. Hermione wanted to go with him, but knew he wouldn't ask. I thought we could, maybe, make him jealous." Harry blinked, then smiled broadly. "That just might work," he said, chuckling. He held out a hand which Victor took, his own smile breaking through. "I think we might just get along, Victor. And if you manage to get those 2 together, all the better. I am getting tired of all the fighting." Victor laughed. "I think I would like to be friends with you, Harry Potter. Your flying in the first task was very impressive. I would very much like to fly against you sometime." Harry nodded. "Maybe next weekend we can work something out." Both Seekers looked interested in that prospect as they walked into the castle together. They made plans to have a Seeker-off after breakfast next Saturday. Ginny chimed in with her 2 Knuts from time to time as they set up the rules. As they reached the entrance doors, Victor stopped and looked at the pair next to him. "How long have you 2 been together?" Harry and Ginny looked at each other. "A little over a month," Harry replied, looking back to the Bulgarian. Victor blinked, surprised. "You seem very close," he observed. "I think you will be together for a long time." Hogwarts students looked a little embarrassed, but Harry nodded his agreement, once more turning back to his girlfriend. "I think we will as well." Ginny blushed, but stood on her tiptoes and gave him a chaste peck on the lips. her eyes promising more to come later. Victor smiled at the sight. They had the same look as his parents, a couple who had been together for over 40 years now. He expected that Harry Potter and this Ginny Weasley would be the same. The Gryffindors said goodbye to Victor as they headed up to the tower to shower and change, as the Durmstrang students went in for breakfast. End of chapter 22. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this. I'm really loving this story. As I keep saying, it's one of my favourites. I like how they are fleshing out some of the characters a little more. Victor trying to get Ron and Hermione together by making Ron jealous. Love it. And also things are starting to warm up as well. Oh god, I keep saying that, don't I? Anyway, have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. See you next chapter. Bye.